Hello everyone. Today I want to give you guys a little lesson on knowing when to make use of point of interest, like knowing when to make use of a breaker block when there's an other block below it, and knowing when to make use of an other block when there's a breaker block above it. You understand that kind of thing. So remember that this strategy that I use, structural liquidity and point of interest. The liquidity is a very key part of this strategy. Meaning that what I use as my liquidity is basically inducement. It's that first pullback after market breaks structure. Now, that first pullback, you have to pay attention to it. Now, in the sense that, let me use this first diagram for example. This one. Let me use this one as example. Price broke out from this structure. After breaking out, it did a pullback. The pullback that it did not touch this breaker here. The pullback was right above this breaker. Now do remember that first pullback is what I take as my liquidity. So since the first pullback did not touch that breaker, it means that the breaker block is still yet to be mitigated. Meaning that if price should come back to sweep this first pullback, which is what I take as my liquidity, this breaker block here is going to be valid to be used as entry, regardless of there being another block below it. Because why? When price broke out of that structure, it didn't touch that breaker block first, and it didn't go below the breaker block. So that was why the breaker block is valid. You understand? After market broke structure, it didn't go below or touch to mitigate that breaker block. You understand? That's what makes that breaker block valid. So whenever price breaks out from a structure and the breaker block that's there was not mitigated during the first pullback, then you can still use that breaker block as your entry. Let's use this as an example. This is a breaker block here. Price broke out from this structure. After breaking out, it did a pullback, but the pullback did not touch this breaker. So this first pullback is what is the liquidity. As price came back again, it used this breaker to buy, regardless of there being another block below this zone. There's another block here, but price didn't use it. Why? Because the first pullback after market broke structure did not touch the mitigation block, meaning that the mitigation block is still valid to be used as entry. You understand? I'll give another example using gold. This is another block here, and this is a mitigation block here. This is a mitigation block. This below it is another block. Price broke out from this structure. After breaking out, the first pullback he made was here. This pullback did not touch this breaker, meaning that this breaker is yet to be mitigated. As price went up again and came back to sweep that liquidity, that first pullback, it used the mitigation block to buy. Why? Because the first time market pulled back, it didn't touch that breaker block. It didn't touch it, meaning that this breaker is still valid. But in a case like this here, this is a breaker here, and this is another block below it here. And when price broke out from this structure, this is what price did. It broke out from the structure, made this pullback, and mitigated this a breaker block. So this breaker block has been mitigated. And you know that this strategy says you have to pick a point of interest that's yet to be mitigated. So immediately this breaker block got mitigated during the first pullback, it turned to liquidity. This breaker block is no longer valid to be used. So that was why, as market went up, came back again, what he used to buy is no longer this breaker. It made use of the other block below it. Do you get? As price broke out, the first pullback touched the breaker block. After touching the breaker block, it made that breaker block no longer valid to be used to take a continuation buy. So when price came back to sweep that first pullback, which is the inducement, that's your liquidity, it used the other block. Why? Because the other block is now the only unmitigated point of interest there. I'll use another example in GJ. Find another example in GJ. Here, this one is a sell. Price broke this structure. After breaking this structure, it did a pullback. This is a breaker here. But the pullback that it did went below that breaker, mitigated that breaker, and still went below it, meaning that this breaker is no longer valid to be used. That was why after price came back to sweep that first pullback, it made use of this other block here to buy. It didn't make use of this breaker anymore, because when the first pullback occurred, it mitigated that breaker, making that breaker no longer valid. Do you understand? Now the only unmitigated point of interest is now this other block. I'll look for another example for buy. This is the example. Price broke out from this structure. Okay, price broke out from this structure. We're going to look for another time frame that shows the breaker clearly. Is there? Does it show on the 1 hour time frame? Let me confirm. I'm going to look for what shows the thing clearly. Here, this is the breaker here. Price broke out from this structure. After breaking out from the structure, it made the first pullback here. Now, do you notice that this first pullback that it made mitigated this breaker here, meaning that this breaker is no longer valid to be used, because your point of interest has to be unmitigated. Now, as price went up, this first pullback is now the liquidity. That's the inducement, that first pullback. So that's what's going to be solved the next time price comes back, before it takes another continuation buy. As price came back, it didn't use this breaker again to buy. Why? Because it was already mitigated. During the first pullback, price touched it and mitigated it. So now what's going to make use of is now this other block that's below it, because this is the only unmitigated point of interest. And that was why I picked my entry there. You can see if you make the analysis. So this basically says, after price breaks out of any structure, pay attention to that first pullback. That first pullback will help you a lot. If the first pullback didn't mitigate the breaker the market broke out from, it means that price may likely take a continuation from the breaker. But if the first pullback mitigated that breaker, understand, something like this, after the first pullback, if the first pullback did not mitigate the breaker, something like this, then you can still use the breaker as entry. But after price broke out and the first pullback mitigated that breaker or even went below it, then you're going to make use of the other block below that breaker, to take your buy. So that is it. Hope you all understand.